For the first time in more than 4 years, there are now more Americans looking for work than there are jobs available. A report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows the nation's number of unemployed in July rose to 7.24 million. So that's just above 7.18 million job openings. That pushed the openings to unemployed ratio down to 0.99. By the way, that's the lowest since April of 2021. And hiring as well slowed sharply, with the economy adding only 73,000 jobs in July. Yes, that is far short of what economists had expected. Well, the numbers appear to be a sign that the labor market is losing steam and is now also raising questions about where the economy is headed next. Well, with us this morning is Christopher Fagan, a partner with the accounting firm of Moore Colson, based right here in Atlanta. Christopher, good to see you this Friday morning. Okay, so from your perspective, is what I just mentioned, is this all a sign of a short-term slowdown or something more structural that we're going to see in the labor market?
It's really hard to say at this point because you've got a confluence of things that are impacting the economy as a whole. So businesses in general are dealing with inflationary pressures of tariffs. There are, frankly, supply chain constraints that people are still working through as it relates to tariffs as they resource. And then the cost of capital for businesses is historically high as it's been in the past 15 years or so. So as those things are weighing on the economy, businesses have somewhat put their growth plans on hold and reevaluated how they deploy capital. And at some point, the labor takes a hit on that front.
Yeah, and Christopher, when you hear those numbers like 7.24 million people unemployed, I personally know several of my friends who are unemployed right now looking for jobs. What should the everyday worker here in Georgia or really across the country take away from those stats?
Well, it's too early to say whether this is a long-term trend or just a blip in the economy. What we're seeing is businesses are evolving to the changes in the economy on a daily basis. So currently, while businesses aren't hiring at the rate they historically have, and is excess workforce, it's not to a point where we feel like it's a concerning trend. Typically, businesses are very nimble here and they evolve and are able to make decisions to right size their business. And then as they are able to adjust to the impact of tariffs and the higher cost of capital due to interest rates, they'll be able to focus on growth again, which will bring back the jobs.
Yeah, a lot of people looking forward to when that happens. A lot of people also, Christopher, may be thinking about maybe I need to kind of shift gears and have a job change, do something different. The numbers that we mentioned, is that perhaps a warning sign that it might be harder to go and do something new if you want to find other opportunities?
Yeah, businesses are going to be more selective right now in their hiring process, and definitionally, yes, it's going to be much harder for those looking for new opportunities, specifically in the white collar trades. However, the blue collar trades, there continues to be a labor shortage, and there's robust demand for jobs in those spaces. So I don't think they will be impacted as much as your college educated workforce.
Yeah, and how does this all affect families? I mean, we do stories pretty much every day here on the news where we talk about people struggling to keep up with the basic everyday bills. Groceries, of course, a big concern for a lot of people. So how do these numbers, and when you talk about the employment, how is it affecting just the everyday person?
The economy and just inflation in general is affecting families probably detrimentally. So spending dollars are a zero-sum game, right? So every dollar the government takes in tariffs is a dollar it costs someone else. And sooner or later, that's passed on to consumers. So what we're seeing is that folks are cutting back on discretionary spending, things like vacations, going out to dinner, things of that nature. And businesses are cutting back on uh, financing their growth. So it's rippling through the economy. But to your question about how it impacts families, people are definitely cutting back on their discretionary spend. And those who are struggling to pay bills are going to see lower wage increases going forward for a period of time until businesses are able to work through these macroeconomic factors.
Yeah, certainly uncertain times. Georgia's been always a little different, though. Our unemployment rate here has generally run below the national average. I even read a report that Georgia is one of the best states for even new grads to find jobs. So, with the new numbers that we're just talking about, is that fading a bit, where Georgia is still kind of having an advantage over maybe other areas when it comes to finding a job?
So there's no recent information that's specific to Georgia that says that. What I would tell you is that Georgia is very resilient because of the diversity of our economy. When you think about Atlanta, you have a very white collar, highly educated workforce. But when you get outside of the economy of Atlanta, you have a very blue collar workforce. And that blue collar workforce is very diverse. They're working in manufacturing, farming, hospitality, and those industries somewhat balance out and make Georgia very resilient because oftentimes not all of those industries are taking the hit at the same time as it relates to economics.
All right, we got just a couple of minutes, so we're going to go ahead and move on. I think we have to go ahead and take a break. But Christopher Fagan, it's so good to talk with you, and like you said, uncertain times, but hopefully there will be some good news to share here pretty soon. We appreciate you joining us this morning on The Take.
Thank you.